Welcome to this teaching, partially underground, somewhere on this continent. Tonight I entitled this teaching, Hospitality. This is part 27 out of a series I've done called Discipleship and the Gifts. If you'd like to follow along, open up to Romans chapter 12, verse 13. Distributing to the necessity of saints, given to hospitality. This is my chart in this series, 41 verses, or 41 gifts, and these are all Bible verses here, and part 13, Discipleship and the Gifts, part 13 on this channel. You'll see this chart, you can look at it in more detail. So, this is one of the help gifts, and this is right here on my chart. I'm going to try to give a little bit of a balanced view, at least balanced in my opinion. It's like a bicycle wheel. I remember when I was a kid, I got excited on my bicycle and I had a tool to adjust the spokes. I was just turning all the spokes everywhere. And then I tried to get on it and it wouldn't ride because it was an egg shaped. It was out of balance. So I'm trying to give a balanced view on this gift of hospitality. And for this teaching, the main focus of hospitality is people staying at someone else's house. There are three types of visits by people. And it's like a traffic signal. You got a green light situation, you got a yellow light situation, and a red light situation. So I was listening to a gentleman who was an historian who I probably wouldn't agree with a lot of his maybe interpretation of scriptures, but I can quote from him and his history. And he talked about this thing about the early church. He made a statement, the early church had a rule. And I didn't find this in a lot of places, but a few I did. And this rule was the 3-day rule. That generally speaking, when people come, you'd be 3 days or you send them on their way. So let's look at Acts chapter 28, verse 7. In the same quarters were possessions of the chief man of the island, whose name was Publius, who received them and lodged 3 days courteously. So, and this goes back into great New Testaments, back to 1519. The number 3. I looked at a number of commentaries, and a lot of them didn't really mention it, but few had some comments. One commentary says, we can hardly think of the hospitality of Publius extended to the whole 276 from on board. And he believes it was talking about a limited number, and it applied that after 3 days, they found lodging on a more permanent basis. But the courteous Certerion was 3 days courteous. And I thought that was an interesting thought. So back to Romans 12:13 about hospitality. It is Strong's word 5381. Philo exonion fond of strangers. Commentary on this: hospitality or the duty of entertaining strangers is very necessary in ancient times when houses of public accommodation were scarce. And the word is given more emphasis with the continuing distributing to, continuing, pursuing, as if in a chase. Strong's word 1377. The word given to hospitality, or given, and it means to pursue, to eliminate, chase, or hunt. Luke 10:34. And the Good Samaritan went and bound up this person's wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his own beast, and brought him to the inn, and took care of him. This Good Samaritan saw a need. This is a red light situation. This is a situation where it's an emergency, and this person needs help now. And this Good Samaritan here is chasing after this situation that is a red light event. Another commentary is he did not take him to his house, but he took him to a place of public access. There are a number of ministries. Franklin Graham's Samaritan's Purse I used to give to a ministry that worked with them in other countries. And I think that might be one of the better ones if you're looking for a place. And when a storm happens or certain things happen, they send people and chase down a situation. Now, I want to introduce a word from Ephesians 5:15. Circumspectly. And not unwise, understanding, and I just love that word, cautiously, considerately, discreetly, prudently, carefully, considering all circumstances. And so when we're in a red light for ministering to somebody with hospitality, we need this word in all three areas, red, all three situations. We need to really carefully consider options and possibilities. With the red one, you may not have a lot of time to think it out in order to really do something, but circumspectly should be involved with the word hospitality. A yellow light situation. There was a friend of mine in the 70s, and I was leaving the state and he was staying, and he had been not, his father had left kind of early in his youth, and they both became Christians. He came to a healing revival and saw a great miracle and was crying and came to the Lord through that. And he moved back in with him. He was in between moving to another state and for ministry reasons, and he had a business, and so they just both sat down and they lived together for a year or two. And his father was kind of picky, but they seemed to work it out. Two adults willing to talk things through, And he was living there for a year. And I say it was yellow because it wasn't like he was out on the street, but they hadn't had time together in his youth. So as an adult, young adult, his dad, and I don't know exactly how that conversation came into being, but, and there was situations to be talked through about, you know, what was expected, you know, because he's living a certain lifestyle, and they made it work. And this was not a green light situation of someone just stopping through town for overnight or a day or something. This was not a red light situation of a terrible event. It was something to walk circumspectly through these events. And I never heard a fight, an argument, criticism, attack. There was one pastor who had a master's in psychology a million years ago, and he talked about house rules. And, you know, everybody, every home that you visit has a culture, has smells, has things in it, and they should have house rules. This is just how we live here. And if you're partaking of the hospitality, you should be considerate of those rules. And he used to say, well, when someone comes over and if they start being a goofball, you could point out the house rules. I would say, if this is a green light situation, even write it down and say, okay, this is this is the house rule, and you could point it to it. You know, not doing the rule. And we live in a very disrespectful society. So if you or your family visits, don't be that person. Over the years, I've stayed at different places, not so much anymore, haven't done a lot of traveling, but when I would stay with somebody, a relative, a friend, I would buy some flowers depending on who it was. I'd give them a gift card. I would give them a thank you card. And again, it depends on who, how well I knew them, and what, and just saying thank you for letting me stay here. There's a book entitled Boundaries by Dr. Harry Cloud. And every human being should read this book, or at least go on YouTube and just look up Henry Cloud and Boundaries and just see some of the different videos on that topic. Another balance to this whole thing of offering hospitality, Matthew 7:6. Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, and turned and rend you, pull apart, tear, and rip you apart with violence. And it's funny, I've never heard, I remember a sermon about this being in a verse. Chasing after, but then I've tried to bring us circumspectly, and now there's just times that you should have a revelation like, you know what, I step into this thing and it's going to go bad. I think of a story and it's a sad story, but it's kind of funny. So this young man, he sees these two guys physically just pounding on each other, and a crowd had gathered and was watching this fight. And so he stepped in. I don't know if this is in a school or on the street, but he stepped in to be a peacemaker and said, come on, stop it. And they both stopped fighting each other, and they started pounding him. If I remember rightly, it's been so long ago, maybe 20 years ago, he ended up in the hospital because they both were pounding him now, and I'm guessing the crowd was cheering. What are you doing breaking up this fight? Who do you think you are? And so sometimes it can go wrong. And one story in concluding this short teaching on hospitality is there was a church and this church, another city, another state, had a food bank. And they would deliver food. And so a pastor of this church, his wife, decided to deliver a box. Well, she was kidnapped, and she was beat up, and then she was killed. And if she had gone with another person, maybe there would have been more discernment there to say, hey, you know, I got some bad vibes. There's something creepy about this place. But it was not good going alone. And these are just two examples of how situations where people with pure intentions are turned on and destroyed. There was someone I knew in another city, another state, a church, and they had a ministry team. And two of the elders would come, and one lady would come, and they would just visit. You know, you'd fill out a card and put it in. They'd set up a time to come, and just old-fashioned, old-school pastor church visitation. And they went in a three because the two elders wanted a lady, and one gentleman was a former pastor. He really wasn't pastoring here at this church, but he was come from a good old-fashioned Baptist background, and walking them through the Roman road, and even a few times people had been going there but hadn't really got a clear understanding of what salvation is. But they went together in a group, which was really helpful. And so I just encourage you tonight to have a revelation, to seek for God, to walk circumspectly. Is this a green light situation? Is this a yellow light situation? Is this a red light situation? And is this a situation where you need to back down and back out? There's some rough things going out there. And we need to be obedient if God is calling us, but we should not step into it if God isn't calling us. If you don't believe in prayer and God speaking to you, well, you don't believe in walking circumspectly and just doing everything, well, you might learn the hard way. But God wants us to have wisdom. And it doesn't mean if something turns out wrong, the Good Samaritan, if this guy had, took a bottle and hit him over the head, I don't want you, I hate people like you, and just start pounding him on the head. Well, he did what God told him to do, but and he may still have got hurt, but so we need to really be understanding and walking in revelation and wisdom, and praying for God's angels to protect us if we got to go into this situation, and then be willing to accept the outcome if we really believe in our heart this is God. Lord, I pray for everyone viewing this. This is kind of a simple topic, but very difficult in the implementation of it, especially as the years have gone by. People have gotten more mean and cunning and destructive, and I just pray if people have a heart that maybe to work with a group like a rescue mission or something, a group that is established in the community where you go with other people and you're involved in that way and fulfill that gifting if you have through an organization and other people and witnesses and people to help you to discern what to do and what not to do. I pray for a spirit of wisdom. I pray you would deal with people who maybe don't do very good at that, to open up some opportunities and seek God to have a understanding of, hey, Lord, should I step out in this way? Signing off from somewhere partially underground. Bid you good night.